More architecture, very briefly, the ASM structures. We have an ASM instance, and as with an RDBMS instance, that is memory structures and processes. It's transient, lives in your RAM, on your CPUs. May require a certain amount of tuning, but I would hope not much. We get that set up right, and there's very little fiddling around to do subsequently. The disks and the disk groups, this is where there's a lot of work to be done. If you get it wrong, or I should say we won't get it wrong, but if it is not done optimally with the original installation, there are some things that can be changed very easily later, some things that are going to be extremely awkward. It's worth putting a lot of thought into these devices, and in the next couple of slides we'll see how these devices can be created. We assemble them into disk groups, we format them to allocation units at disk group creation time, and we need to put some thought into the options for the disks, the disk groups, the allocation units. For example, how big are those allocation units? How many disks in the disk group? How many groups do you want? What defaults should you set up? Theoretically, redundancy, that's mirroring and striping, can be controlled per file. You don't want to do it per file, not if you are consolidating many databases. You want to have defaults that can be applied to all files. So we need to put some thought into that. But how many disks is a really difficult one. And that's where I often see some very poor implementations. If you are using ASM for your mirroring, what do you need? Theoretically, 2 disks, just 2 devices per disk group. So if you want 1 terabyte of data, you could create a 2 terabyte disk group consisting of 2 logical devices, 2 disks, and then we can mirror between them. That will give you nowhere near the best performance. You would normally be wanting for a terabyte or 2 terabyte disk write group, I would normally be going for 8 or 16 devices. And that will give ASM far more options for its striping, layered on top, of course, of whatever underlying striping is being done perhaps by your hardware RAID system. A lot of thought needs to go into that, assembling disks into disk groups. The files, well, the files you have much less control over, provided you have the file extent size, for instance, is calculated by Oracle based on the size of the file and the size of the allocation units. So you get that right, the rest will follow. What we do need to consider is how we create the table spaces and the segments within the table spaces to make sure that we do map the segment extents accurately onto the file extent. That we have to get right. So the allocation unit size, therefore the file extent size related to the table space uniform extent size. Oh, you do want to be using uniform extent sizes, incidentally.